Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Minnesota Rack Stars podcast. And today we have with us Brandon Sundberg and also Josh Vickers. And we're kind of talking about what's going on right now in our world as far as hunting goes. But also we're going to go through some tips on some things you need to remember if you're heading out west hunting. We go through some gear things that you might want to remember, and then also just some things to be thinking outside the box when you head out west, because every time you leave home and you head out on a hunting trip somewhere, you're always thinking about, did I do this, did I do that, did I forget something? So that's kind of what we're going over today, just to kind of help you remember and kind of remind you of some things that you might want to keep in mind as you're getting up and geared up for this next hunting season here. So with that, we're just going to get to a few housekeeping things, and hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Hey, if you're like us, you're getting ready for that upcoming hunting season. The one thing we always want to make sure of is that we have the best apparel possible to keep us out in the woods longer. And we've been paired up with Arctic Shield ever since the beginning. And what they want to do for you guys, the listeners, is give you a discount code to get you 20% off of everything on their website, which is arcticshieldоutdoor.com. And if you use the code RACK20, that's RACK20, you'll be able to get 20% off everything on their website. So take advantage of this offer right now. Well, if you're looking for a gift or just something for yourself, Minnesota Rack Stars related, I'll tell you what, you need to check out our clothing store that we have. The link is on our social media platforms and on our website, where you can go to it and order some sweet Minnesota Rack Star swag and accessories. I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, when things are winding down, I'm going to put on a movie or watch some sports on TV. The first thing I do is I get into my Minnesota Rack Star sweatpants and sweatshirt, because it is so comfortable. And that's the thing, like, if you got a shirt or pants or whatever that are comfortable, you know what I'm talking about. And this fits it to a T, and I am not joking around. This stuff is so comfortable, and that's why we're going to continue to keep this store open online, because it's a great product, everything that they put out. And why don't you guys check it out, and I guarantee you you'll like what you have on. So with that, we're going to get to the podcast here. Thanks for listening. Alrighty, welcome back, you guys, to another episode of the Minnesota Rack Stars podcast. And today we have a couple people with us that have been here on the podcast before. We have Brandon Sundberg and also Josh Vickers. Thanks for coming on here with me, guys. I truly do appreciate it. First things first, I was out mowing lawn today, and what I should have been doing is bagging up all of these acorns that have been falling. These acorns around here have been falling like freaking crazy. Brandon, have you been kind of seeing the same thing over by you guys?
Yeah, I've been noticing the same thing, and Dad's been out bear baiting and whatnot, and so that's been started. And noticing the acorns is always this time of year, but I've definitely noticed them even going to work on the city streets and stuff, just piling up everywhere. So
Yeah, that's the one thing that with bear hunting coming around, I'm sure everybody's getting ticked off that that the bear aren't hitting the bait. But as far as deer goes, um, the one thing I've noticed is that the trail cameras have really shut off, and I've heard that from a lot of people that the trail cameras, they're not getting their bucks on trail camera. They're freaking out a little bit. Where'd they go? I know the deer that I've seen on trail camera, I mean, it's the activity is really shut down right away. I was getting a bunch of photos of a lot of deer, and all of a sudden, boom, here within the last week or so, it is completely shut off. Is that kind of speak volumes or speak for the truth for you guys as well, Josh?
Yeah, but I just texted Brandon that about an hour ago. I said, "Geez, everything's slowed down, quite a bit for us because no, we share a lot of photos and we share a lot of the same deer too." But yeah, it's been a pretty drastic shift in the amount of at least mature deer, good deer sightings. Still get a lot of the does and fawns and scrub bucks, but in terms of like the nice deer, it's really slowed down the last, I'd say 3-4 days for us.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, these deer were kind of moving around, and kind of being pretty repetitive and almost patternable to a certain degree when they were showing up on trail camera, and they're with their bachelor groups or whatever, and then all of a sudden just boom, gone. The one thing I noticed, so I have a 2-acre bean field, and it is completely demolished. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's still, I mean, it's probably mid shin high, and I mean it's pretty even throughout the entire field, but every single bean is nipped. Every single one. Like I walked through there the other day a little bit, and every single one in 2 acres, and I seeded it pretty heavy, has been nipped. And since I noticed that every bean has been nipped off, the trail camera that's on that field, I have seen nothing.
Do you have
So
any pods on there?
fawns,
No pods. Like, is there
oh
beans
pods,
growing
yeah,
or?
yeah. So there are some flowers that are coming on there, so that those I'll get some pods on there, no doubt. But I just thought it was interesting how, in my mind, those deer are focusing on the tops of those beans, and now
Yeah.
that all of those are gone, activity has just shut off on that field. So something to keep in mind, for future reference, where I'm going to pay attention to how many pods end up developing on these beans. But if there isn't much for development, I might just push back my planting if I'm going to go beans and
Mhm.
and seed it really heavy and try to keep maybe those deer around, you know, a little longer when there's those tops on those beans yet,
Yeah, in
rather
the
than
early
planting
season,
early.
yeah.
So I don't know, something to think about. Has have you guys done anything? Because I've done a few different things this year, altering some of my strategies. Have you guys done anything interesting this year that you haven't done before, that you're interested to see some of the results?
I can let Brandon go first if he's got anything interesting going on, then I can go second.
Okay. Yeah, something different this year was it's kind of a square plot. I don't know, maybe 3 acres or so. I mean, somewhere in that size, but um the last year we did it was all beans, so there was no, and it's pretty open on the outside edges of it, so the deer, you know, don't they have they could- you're not making them walk out into the field necessarily to show themselves. And so this year we did, I don't know, probably 20 rows thick of corn from the wheat, where they're coming from the bedding and stuff. And then probably about like a 60-yard swath of beans, and then another, 20 or so rows of corn again. And so where their deer are generally coming from, they got to come out, gonna work their way out along that corn because it's coming in perfect. And they got to come out into those beans, to be able to see to the other side of the plot or whatever. And then part of it was a little bit lower spot, and the corn where the corn wasn't coming as good, we took and, you know, we put a bunch of brassicas and stuff in there, kind of made a green carpet coming up to that corner of the beans, and it makes almost a perfect pinch on the edge of this swamp grass and stuff. So I'm super curious to see how it's been a while since I've been out there since we planted that, but I
Is it
mean,
on Hilltop?
what's that?
Is it
It's
on
on,
your Hilltop?
it's on Cam's piece there.
Ah,
It
yep,
just makes a really nice, good pinch,
yep.
and it'll be interesting to see how the deer use it, especially if there's deer out in the beans. They got to come out to be able to see in there. So something different that we did this year instead of having just wide open where in the past you could see deer standing in the edge of the woods looking out and they might never come out into the open, So
Yeah.
something
Kind of
something
force them
different.
to get closer.
Exactly. So
How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I've planted this blend before, but this year it's done really well. It's the Domain Dirty Bird. And like I've been raving about it to you guys, but it's I like it because it has sorghum, millet, sunflowers, beans, and a little bit of clover in it, I believe. Um, and sorghum and millet aren't like the most favorable for deer, like not like corn and beans are, but it does once it fully matures based on like all of the stuff I planted. And I planted straight sorghum before, but more as a screen. And the deer do eat it, but they eat it later than corn. So like on a smaller plot like mine, this is at my dad's, um, it won't get hammered as hard until later in the year, which is about starting in November, right around rifle season. Whereas corn, they can eat it when it's milky in September and August, probably more August into July for the milky stage. And then obviously on a smaller plot, they'll start eating the corn there, through October, November, and they can get eaten up pretty quick if it's a small plot. But one thing this year with that sorghum, I got it in really early, and obviously we've had a bunch of precipitation. So I mean, it's 6, 8 foot, 10 foot tall in some spots of sorghum, which now I'm like, it might be too tall for the deer come fall. But so I'm actually kind of hoping it gets knocked over by the wind or snow a little bit just to get it more at eye level for the deer. But the beauty about it this year is that it grew so well and so thick that the beans that are in there were pretty hidden, and so they weren't susceptible to getting browse pressure. And so, like when you walk in there and you start looking through all the stalks of the sorghum and millet, there's bees that are knee to waist high that already have a pile of pods on them. So it was like kind of a good learning lesson to see how good it can actually be. And along with the rain, I put a heavy amount of fertilizer on it to really try to bolster it. So I think that's been a big part of it, combined with the rain. But just seeing the amount of diversity of the food in this plot, has me really hopeful that, it might not be, like I said, the greatest for deer, but wildlife as a whole, it's going to sustain a lot of food throughout the winter and into the spring.
Um, the one thing I've noticed throughout the years too is if you get the right combination in with beans, you're going to preserve those beans a little longer because the deer aren't really, I don't know, picking through it as much. It's harder for them to pick through. So it's interesting to see, the how much growth you can get out of those beans, during
Yeah.
that time frame. So, Brandon, going back to your plot, when are you thinking about targeting that spot?
Um, it depends. I want to get a camera on part of it there. Since we planted those brassicas, we planted some, I think, stuff like Sugar Mama, something else that we were getting there from Domain, but it was put that stuff out there, and I want to get a camera like right on that pinch of that corner where it's coming out to those beans. And if anything with it, that time of, depending on if they're in there early still, if there's the beans are still green. Otherwise, as they're turning, we broadcast this bunch of stuff into the beans too with those brassicas. I plan to go back out there with some like oats and stuff too. So keeping some of that green in there, and so as those leaves are dying, depends on, if they're in there early or there's good sign in there early with the green beans being green yet, I'd probably target trying to get in there. Otherwise, kind of watch the camera, or there's a spot where we can kind of glass that plot too from a distance and see how deer are using it. But, hopefully then, that early fall with those brassicas and forage turnips and stuff like that, and there will get them in there a little bit sooner anyway. So,
Yeah, and I know the last time that I really saw good action on my plot, shooting hours, daylight shooting hours, um, was when I had corn right in with the beans, and I planted it all beans, but then I just took my 2-row corn planter and I just made lines throughout the beans, and I had bucks coming out during shooting hours, and it was great because like you're talking about, Josh, that cover that they have, they'll feel comfortable coming out um, onto the field and give you that opportunity. And I know the one thing that I kind of switched up this year, I've talked about in different podcasts, is just mowing my clover plots um, at different times. Like I'm not mowing my whole entire clover plot. I'm mowing half of it, and then the other half I'm leaving. And then once that taller stuff gets too tall, I'll mow that and let the other stuff come up. The very interesting thing that I saw, and there was actually another person that I was talking to who sent me a trail camera picture of this big buck that he's watching. Um, he didn't have him on camera, and then all of a sudden he went out and mowed an area, and it was just grass. And all of a sudden, like I don't know if it was that day or the next day or 2 days later, he had that buck on camera right in that spot where he mowed the grass.
hmm.
There's a spot that I mowed. Um, I haven't actually put a camera on that clover plot that I've been mowing, but there's a different spot that I was mowing, and what I found to be really interesting was when I mowed it for about, I would say 2.5 weeks, I had pictures like crazy in that area. And now that it's more mature, that camera has kind of slowed down. However, this was the same time all the other cameras started slowing down too. So is it the acorns or was it,
Yeah.
that growth coming through? I don't know. So there's a little, I don't know, asterisk right there when it comes to, well, there was a bunch of deer on there, but now there isn't because is it growing because it's growing taller, it's getting too mature, or is it because the acorns are dropping? But it's always fun. It's always fun just trying new things,
Oh yeah.
And what do you got to lose? And all of a sudden you might discover something that works on your property. And I think that's the thing we all need to remember is that, whatever we hear on podcasts and YouTube and all that stuff, you know, sometimes that doesn't apply to everybody's property in the surrounding areas. You gotta take things into consideration, what other people's properties look like compared to your property. And when the deer start showing up on your cameras, year in and year out when things start to crank up. And in my mind, that's what you should be gearing like food plots. When people ask, what should I plant for a food plot? Well, when do the deer start showing up? If your bucks start showing up, mid-October when everything's, drying down, well, then you want to focus on your greens. If your buck starts showing up late season, well, then I'd be focusing more on your grains, and
Mhm.
try to get those around, during that late season. But everything's, situational in the world of hunting. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I find it hard, and I know Brandon probably deals with the same thing. But I get asked all the time for food plot advice and what should I plant, how should I go about it, what method, no till, buckwheat, all this stuff. And I said, at the end of the day, like I can speak from my experience and what's worked for me, but depending on your soil type and where you're at and what latitude of the country you're at, when I mean I'm not talking saying I'm giving advice to guys in Iowa and Kentucky, but I mean you just go from where you guys are at to where we're at, and you go another hour south. It's like it can totally vary what type of soil content you have and how
Mhm.
stuff's going to grow. So it can be a little bit challenging that way, or even just on one property, whether it's next to a swamp or if it's up on a ridge or if it's
Oh yeah.
in the hardwoods. It's totally going to dictate what type of soil you got and what how stuff is going to grow and the amount of sunlight. And so I always tell people, I'm like, this is from the knowledge I have, which is more than most, but not that good. I'm no social media food plot expert by no means, but we've done it a bunch, and me and Brandon are lucky enough that we get to do a lot of stuff together and coordinate, and so we get to see how different experiments go, next because our properties butt
Right.
up to each other. Um, but I always say like your first couple of years is going to be a little bit of a crapshoot and some experimenting. Like I can tell you, the easiest things to grow, they might not be the best, but they're going to grow and they're going to be better than what you got. Um, and so, yeah, I definitely find that it can be difficult and it varies so much depending. And the best thing you can do is just give it a whirl and try, you know,
Well, I'll
like
tell
me
you
and
what,
Brandon. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what, Josh, like you said, you're no expert in the social media world, whatever. Well, I'll tell you what, you are an expert in your area. Where you live,
On my
you
80
guys
acres.
you guys are the experts in your area. If I came onto your property, you know more than me. If
Yeah.
if Mark Drury stepped onto your guys' property, you know more than him. So you do know you are experts in your area.
Yeah.
And like I think what you were getting at was, you know, this works for me. This works for us, and that's why we're talking about it. And sometimes, and that's why I like doing this. It's not that I know everything. I'm just telling people what has worked for me, what has worked for people like you guys, and that's why I like
Yeah.
interviewing you guys and talking to you guys because you guys try different things than what I try, and it's nice just to get that out there and spark some different ideas for other people.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, that's why I listen to podcasts and YouTube videos, is because I'm always looking for those little nuggets of information. Most of the time now, it's like I've heard the same stuff 100 times, but you get that one little bit of nugget of information that it's like, oh, light bulb goes off. Like that makes sense to me. I need to try this or do that. Right.
Hmm. I haven't tried that before, those sorts of things,
Oh yeah.
you know. Always learning is what I feel like. I've done it how many years now, and it's like I don't have anything perfected. I'm not, you know, yes, I know what maybe not to do, what
Yeah.
works better, you know,
But that's still learning.
but I'm still learning from it. So, and that's part of it that I really enjoy is, you know, getting to be that farmer like grandpa used to be back in the day, but I'm doing it just with deer,
Yeah.
food plots and that kind of thing. But yeah.
All right, so Brandon, we're going to switch things up here a little bit. So I want to go back and kind of relive last year a little bit. Why don't you kind of tell everyone kind of how your hunting season went last year?
It was good. It was short-lived, and that doesn't happen very often in the world of bow hunting, but um it was kind of worked out really convenient too with I had a kiddo on the way due in October-ish in the end of October there, and so I got that. Wife was happy with that gave her the call 4 days into season actually this year. So it was great, it kind of warm the beginning of the season there, but it was a thing where, had a couple deer, on camera or whatever that I would take either one of these two. And they I seen them the first night, opening night of bow season came out. I had to play the wind right with it and everything, and they came out and I made a little micro adjustment the following night to kind of put myself a little bit closer, and then it was a thing where they came out again that last light, but in a little bit different area. But I'm like, I got an idea where these deer are coming from. Um, and then um again, the third night, I kind of wanted to make another little bit of move, but again, it was one I didn't want to step on their toes too much. Like I had a feeling because there's this one final trail that kind of pushed them, um, where I knew they couldn't get behind me coming from where they were coming from. Um, and
From
I
my grandpa's.
right wanted to stay off of that trail or whatever, but I didn't want to get too close. So I actually moved back off of it a little bit. Well, then that night that one of those bucks or whatever came out, and I'm like, I moved further away from that trail, which where I would have been, he would have probably been 20 yards right there in that last bit. And um, so it was a few nights of that of goofiness and like the wind with it. Like I had to come in almost on a V line of where I was gonna sit and let my wind blow in that direction, knowing the deer were over here, because there's no way I couldn't come in through the neighbors or something like that. So it's like I would walk far enough out and then I would go on a straight line to right where I was sitting, which was also I wasn't in a stand. I chose to be on the ground because it's just too much with getting a stand up and then having to cut trees and all that kind of stuff. I found it much easier to put myself right on the ground and let my scent go down the edge of the hill behind me. And I could see down below the branches. I didn't have to cut anything. I had brush and cover, and I would put myself at the base of a tree or whatever. And then that final night, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move myself a little bit closer to this last trail coming out of the woods there. And it was the last, 20 minutes of light. I heard kind of a almost like the antler little clank in the woods there, and it was just dead silent. And then I could see right to my left on the edge of the woods coming up was a buck. It was a little one. He comes out, and then here comes the one that I ended up taking or whatever of those two bucks was right behind him. Comes out and he's standing there at 20 yards or 20, 25, kind of like it, straight or quartering away, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen here. If he can just give me, I got time. If he can just turn broadside for me. And then that little buck, he turned and he came right across the front of me at like 20 yards. And I'm like, they're walking with each other, I'm like, he's gonna pull that other one. And sure enough, he turns and just comes walking right along, and I go to draw back, and I'm like, all right, I gotta stop him. And my elbow's coming, and I gotta get around this tree behind me I'm standing by, and like that, just that little bit of my elbow and that dead silence was and he turns, and I'm like, all right, well, now this is, and that was when I was able to settle and perfect shot and took off through the woods, and then it was, the shakes settle in or whatever, and then it's the call to the buddies, that good feeling because it's been a while for me, so that felt really good to get that the chip off the shoulder there or whatever. So
Well, I think when you guys did the podcast with me, when we did the neighbors podcast, I think that was the number one goal for everybody was for you to get a deer this year. I think that's what everybody was kind of shooting for. And how cool was that it played out that way, that you were the first one to notch your tag?
yeah, yep,
Oh, that's awesome. And I always felt like, it's awesome having not only like a really good friend, but having one of your best friends be also your neighbor. Because it's like every night it's like, are you in stand? Yep. And so you get like the full night report from everybody as it
right,
goes down. So like, leading up to that, it was like he's like, I'm on him, like he's getting close.
uh-huh,
And then it's always like, the back and forth reassurance, like, stay on him and all that good stuff. And then sure enough, he calls and it's like, sorry, Ash, I'm heading up to Malacca tonight to go take photos.
Yep.
right, yeah, it
Um,
was.
s- so let me ask you this here. So you shot that deer on the ground. You've shot deer in a stand. Tell me, like, I don't know, like the intensity of shooting deer off the ground, eye level, compared to in the stand. Is there a big difference for you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done it with the mule deer too, out west, on the ground and at 20 yards too. Or super close, quarters or whatever. And I mean, and that of those 3 nights I was out there, I mean, the encounters I had, it's not, I was, there was opening night was there was deer everywhere, and it was just like, oh, this is wow, look at this. And there was deer, within 50, 60 yards, a couple decent bucks and stuff too. And it was those moments too. I waited, I mean, probably 20 minutes after light or so. Like the moon was coming to be full in that time frame. And so you could see really easy. And so I waited for that field to clear, basically. I didn't want to be pushing those deer off. And then I figured, okay, I must be doing a good job if I'm consistently seeing deer the next few nights there. Um, but yeah, as far as like that rush of it, again, I had multiple other deer close to me, but it was playing my wind right, my thermals right, everything was in my favor to, where those deer were even, some does and stuff were even closer. And I'm like, okay, if I got their nose beat, and they can't see me, it's sitting good. So it's a tough game, but it's fun, and like I already have my eyes set on a couple of potential spots for that situation again this year.
That
If it
brush pile over there
Yep.
looks like a good spot.
Exactly. Exactly.
I've done some hunting off the ground here in Minnesota, obviously in South Dakota as well. But here around here, I do a lot of late season on the ground, and I love it when there's a bunch of snow and you can tuck in like next to a cedar tree or something that has a lot of snow, and then I'll wear my Arctic Shield Predator camo, and those deer cannot see you at all. And like you said, if you get the wind right and the thermals right, I kid you not, I was sitting there one time and I had my tripod set up with my camera, and I'm tucked into like this cedar tree, and all of a sudden it was a yearling fawn come walking by me, and I could have reached out and grabbed its ear. And I'm not kidding you, that's how close it was. And as soon as it got downwind of me, bam, that thing spun and turned and
Yeah.
took off. But yeah, it is so intense on the ground. It's like I can't move. I can't move. You get that feeling where you can't move because you feel like you're going to be seen, and good for you to kind of go, all right, we're going no matter what. And actually was listening to a podcast about kind of that topic yesterday where sometimes you just got to make it happen. Sometimes when those deer are coming in, it's dead calm. You feel like they're going to see you and you feel like, I couldn't do anything. Well, if you don't do anything, you're not going to get a shot. But if you do pull back and all of a sudden they just don't see you, or all of a sudden they kind of freeze up and you get the full draw, you can kind of make something happen. So it's kind of taking a chance, to see if you can make things happen. And obviously it paid off for you. Was that the only deer you ended up harvesting last year then?
Yes, that was the only one. I mean, we had some good luck on our property, and my wife and my brother each harvested nice bucks, and yeah, right there. And That's mine from last year right there.
Nice.
But
So he's got two 90-degree angles on that G2,
yeah,
doesn't
well,
he?
No, no.
this guy wasn't
Oh, okay. The other one back there.
known.
Okay, okay. My bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, dang, he's a good deer.
the one in the back there.
Yeah, tell me about that one in the front there. It's got two 90-degree angles on that
Yeah,
G2.
it's a buck. We can nickname him Scissors. He's got some goofy, you know, I don't know if you can see
Yeah,
with that other side too. I mean, he 90 degrees on that one, and then his whole rack like points forward
that's
on the
wild.
other side too.
Yeah, I always thought like when he was in velvet, he must have like went backwards or he stood up under a branch and kind of pushed it all forward, like when he was in velvet, and he made it really weird like that.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting because I was actually at a taxidermist yesterday, and he was showing me a buck that he shot last year, and the end of the main beam, I believe, um, must have been damaged during velvet, and it busted, like it didn't break all the way off, but it angled down, and I think it still had the G3 coming off of it pointing forward. So the main beam went like straight down, and then that G3 was still pointing straight forward, or it would have been pointing up. But yeah, sweet characteristics there. Josh, why don't you kind of summarize your hunting season last year? We kind of tagged out on the same thing last year.
Yeah, I mean, not my best season personally. I didn't shoot a buck. Um, I had a couple tags. Obviously, I always try to hunt South Dakota, which I had an archery tag last year, and then Minnesota. Um, I kind of made my bet on a tactic in South Dakota last year that I was gonna grind out one spot. The country I hunt's really big and steep and hilly. Um, and so it's pretty difficult to hunt. You know, you can't spot and stalk really. And it's really hard to glass, even though it's hilly, just because it's so thick with cedars and scrub oak and black oak or whatever they call it out there. And I basically just sat up on a couple different scrapes in this one bench, and it's relatively low deer density, so I didn't see a lot of deer, and we normally don't, even in the good years when we've hunted out there. But I knew it was a good area, and like eventually a buck was gonna come in and hit one of the scrapes. So I kind of spent like the peak end of October and November for a week straight, basically sitting two different stands, sun up to sundown. I had a close encounter with a big buck. Um, Once there, just couldn't quite seal the deal. He was on a doe, and she took him took him the other direction. It kind of scared me at like 60 yards through this thick stuff, and never really got a chance at him. And then in Minnesota, I was kind of just going after a couple select bucks after Brandon and his family shot all the rest of them. So I had to.
Hey, but it's about time. I've been waiting.
No, it's well worth it. Like I always joke about that, but
Yeah.
I always tell people as much as I obviously want to kill big deer and want my wife and grandpa to kill big deer when they kill big ones, I'm just tickled pink and super excited, just as if it was for me or my wife. So I was after a couple ones there in Minnesota, never got a crack at them. One of the ones in particular, which is probably the only buck that Brandon and I don't share on camera, got killed opening weekend of rifle, which is good for that hunter. I know it was a youth hunter and super excited for that kid, and their dad puts in a lot of works by the sound of it. So, I mean, good for them. But, I'm just trying to go after always a select few now at home. And so I ate my tag in both states last year. So that wasn't, like I said, good personally for me, but I've had a lot of good years up to last year. So I can't complain. I've had a lot of, 2, 3 deer seasons in a row, which I'm very grateful for and fortunate for. But my highlight of my season was taking Ashley out on her first South Dakota rifle hunt, and she was able to shoot a real nice mule deer, which super pumped about. My buddy's wife shot a real good one too out there, so that was a great trip and definitely made up for the entire season for me. It was to experience that with her and coach her through the spot and stock ish. Obviously not with the bow, but it's big open country, and just trying to get within 200 yards sometimes is a feat in itself when you got a couple bucks and a pile of does herded up in one area. So being able to get her in position and get her to take a nice shot on a standing buck was well worth my season, and I'll eat my tags any day to see my wife or even my good buddies shoot a deer before me.
Yeah, it's just as rewarding helping someone and guiding someone and having them harvest the deer as it is yourself. Yeah, I didn't know how far that horseshoe was up your rear end. I didn't know if it was ever going to come out. I was actually going to, ask if you need me to take you into the ER and do some X-rays and CAT scans and everything else, and because it might have made its way up there pretty far, but it came out. It happens every now and then. Yeah, I
This
mean,
is a redemption year. Brandon got his last year, so now it's all
Oh
bets are
yeah.
off.
yep.
Now I get to go cold for a while, huh?
So along the topics of out of state, we're all going to be doing some out of state hunting here, and this is kind of what I wanted the podcast to kind of revolve around a little bit. Um, as far as is going out of state, um, you've hunted public before, you've hunted private before. Let's kind of go down the public land
Mhm.
outing here a little bit. What are some things that hunters should be reminded of, or maybe talk about some things that maybe get overlooked when it comes to maybe gear or like myself, making sure you have the tag, all those things. Just maybe some things that might get overlooked leading up to the season, because obviously seasons are about ready to kick off if they haven't started up already.
I'll go first because I have some strong opinions on this. Sorry, Brandon.
No, you're
Actually,
fine.
I have one strong opinion. So I've hunted a lot of states for a lot of different species, and the number one thing that I always see that gets overlooked that I can't stress enough for any hunter looking to do it, or even veteran hunters, is read that state's rules and regulations, because not every state is the same. I can promise you that. Whether from wanton waste rules to baiting to cell cameras to access stuff. Um, Make sure you read whatever state you're going to, their rules and regulations. Because, I've hunted, like I said, I've hunted a lot in a lot of different states, and I've seen people mess up on things that is totally legal in your own state. Thankfully, I've always been, for better or for worse, a little bit of a rule thumper, and I've had it ingrained from my grandfather and my dad is like, make sure you know what you're doing and what state you're doing, or anything in life, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to pertain to hunting, but make sure you know you're following the rules and the guidelines for whatever you're participating in, because it can come back and bite you in the ass real quick, right? And so now a big thing that I always tell guys is like the CWD thing. If you shoot a nice buck, now you can bring it back into Minnesota, but it has to be directly to or within 24 hours of crossing the border to your um, licensed taxidermist, right? And we're the last whatever 3 or 4 or 5 years, like you couldn't even bring it into the state of Minnesota. So like if I ever had a buck I wanted to get Euroed or shoulder mounted, like I pretty much would try to line up a taxidermist. So you have to be really sharp on those small rules like that because it can come back and nip you in the ass. And I always tell people, whether you're duck hunting and it's 2 minutes before legal shooting light, is it worth it to shoot 2 minutes early for one freaking wood duck or one Drake mallard to lose your hunting license or your shotgun or whatever? No, it's not worth it. For as much as I like to hunt, I know as much as you guys like to hunt, like it's never ever worth it to go through and get a ticket because a lot of states, have reciprocity for when you get prosecuted. So like if you get your license taken away in Minnesota, you might get it taken away in South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, wherever. I don't know all the states off the top of my head, but there's a lot of things that go both ways. So I can't stress enough to like make sure you understand the rules and regulations for wherever you're hunting and what you're hunting.
How about you, Brandon?
Mm, that's a pretty good one. I mean, that's always the one you always don't want to. I mean, I want to have make sure I have my ducks in a row when I'm in another state if I ever get stopped. I know sometimes we've had things where we've tried to contact a person too, or an officer, and it's like you don't get a phone call back or this person, and then it's like, okay, well, all right, we've tried to get this question answered, that sort of thing, but it's never. So then it was we didn't get it answered, so then we just stayed away from that situation because we were like, all right, well, we didn't get an answer, so we're gonna do something else. But um, I guess my biggest thing when I there's one time on a billboard going out west that was be patient, and that's, when it comes to getting ready to go out there, you get in a rush when you're packing things. You're gonna you make lists and whatnot, but you still manage to forget something. Whether it be you don't want you to be your license, you want to have a knife to clean something, stuff like that. But making sure you got the gear, but again, be patient with it, whether it's getting ready to go out there, being patient when you're out there, not getting in that rush, because that's where things are gonna go wrong or accidents happen. Um, and know the area where you're at and stuff too. I mean, some of the country we in is not too bad as far as getting lost, but if you're alone or with somebody, making sure someone knows where you're at, those can be issues as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my biggest thing is like being patient, knowing, making sure you're not in a rush with things. Got your gear in order, know what you're doing.
I think that's a great tip right there. And I think one thing that helps you be patient, I've heard other people say this before, is make sure you're organized before you go. And if you're well organized, you're going to be a lot more at ease when you get out there. It's like, yep, this is where this is where that is, and it'll make things go a lot smoother. But I agree 100%. I'm more of the patient type of guy, whether it's hunting and passing up deer or just life in general. I feel I have developed a decent amount of patience. That was until I had kids. Um, but anyways, that's a great tip. It's a great point. I'm gonna go with my tip is going to be a lot of us don't do it, but you need to do it. And that is, it doesn't matter what time of day you get to your destination, you need to shoot your bow when you get out there. You just have to shoot your bow. You need to find something, bring your little target with. They make some really cheap small targets out there. Bring that target with and shoot it when you get out there. It was 2 years ago. I went out to South Dakota by myself, and it was late November, and I got out there. I mean, it was dark. I mean, the days were getting shorter, whatever. And I got out there, and what I did was I took a little flashlight and I angled it up, and I was on a ranch, a private property ranch, friends that we know, and I found a leaf, and I took that leaf and I set it on the round bale, and I took my arrow, my extra arrow, and I shoved it through the leaf, and I went back to 20 yards, and I had a headlamp on so I could see my peep and my pins, and I pulled back, shot, I was on, and then I went back to 30, shot on, and I went to 40, and I smoked that leaf at 40, and I went to bed really confident. So that go around, I shot it, I felt good. This last year, we went out there, my two uncles and myself, and we got out there, and I talked about it. I'm like, we got to shoot our bows. We got to shoot our bows. Well, then I forgot about it. I never shot it. Went out, and there was a 10 pointer that came in, and he was coming right in. It was going to be a chip shot. And all of a sudden, some coyotes started yelping, and he kind of got a little spooked, and he kind of 45 degreed away from me. And he ended up being about 40 yards away. I had that spot ranged, and it was 40 yards, and I let one rip, and it went underneath him. Well, I knew right away, like, okay, I felt pretty good about the shot. I mean, that arrow should have hit him, and he didn't jump the string or anything like that. And I get back to the farm, and I'm like, I need to shoot my bow. I need to know if my bow is off or not. And I went back to 40 yards, and I shot, and I was shooting 8 inches low, and that costed me a deer last year because I didn't do my due diligence and do what I talk about. Shoot your bow when you get out there. But I think that is a number one priority when you get out there, because all it takes is a little bump here and there. The other thing too is uh, I ride an e-bike, right? When I ride an e-bike about halfway out there, and then I hop off and go. Well, that bow is also bouncing around on there a lot. So I got to make sure that I'm being careful with that to a certain degree. So that's my tip. I think you guys' tips are awesome. Now I want you guys to start thinking about gear, okay? And I'll go first, so you got a little time to think about gear. One thing, is a must have when you go out west or east or wherever you're going, because hopefully I head out east this year hunting again. I got a spot way out east that I want to be getting out to because I got some good intel out there. But anyways,
I'm
um,
waiting for the invite.
hey, you just hold your horses, buddy. You hold your horses. Um, as far as gear goes, okay, so I just talked about e-bikes. One piece of gear that I will be
Is this for
packing
out
with
west
me,
or in general?
uh, I would say in general for the most part, but definitely out west, definitely out west, and this is why this comes to mind. Last year, on the property that we hunt, I biked out to a spot that I've never hunted before. We had a preset stand hung out there, and I know it's going to be a good spot, but I think the time of year we were out there, just it wasn't happening. I saw a couple does and fawns, but no bucks. But anyways, I went out to this spot, and it was a hike, and I was going, or I should say a ride, because I rode the bike out there because I was having my back issues. But anyways, I was going, and the brakes on my bike are a little squeaky. Okay. And I don't know if you guys know what I need to do to fix that. I mean, I don't want to put any oil on there and stuff on there because then that's going to be scenting up the woods, but I got to do what I got to do, I guess. But anyways, I was heading out there, and I had to go down this big slope, and I didn't want to go straight down it because then I would be going too fast and my bow would be bouncing around, and if I was riding the brakes, it'd be squeaking the whole way down. So what I
And
did
they'd be
is I kind
hot
of
as
did a
shit.
little, what's that?
And they'd be hot as shit.
Right. Yeah. So what I did was I kind of just did a switchback, back and forth, and I worked my way down. And I was almost down to the bottom of the slope, and all of a sudden I saw a nice flat area where I could bike across, and it looked pretty smooth. And all of a sudden I started going into that level spot, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Here was a bunch of cactus I was driving through. And I mean, there was no getting out of there. I'm like, I just got to bore right through this baby, and I'm out probably for sure 2 miles, right? So I go through this patch of cactus, and I'm just like, I am an idiot. Like, come on. So I get out to the spot, I lay the bike down, and I go out and sit. And like I said, I wasn't too successful when it came to seeing deer and whatever. And I was like, God, I can't walk worth a crap right now. I'm like, I'm gonna get out of the stand just a little early in case those tires are completely flat. Well, luckily they weren't, and I was able to bike all the way back. However, there were a crap ton of thorns inside those tires. And
Mm.
the next morning, I get up with my uncle, and we're gonna head out to the stand. And I got ready, got my cameras, all that stuff. I mean, it takes me a good 30 minutes to get all my stuff together. I get everything ready to go, and I go hop on my bike, and both tires are completely flat. So I looked at my uncle. I said, "Well, good luck." I said, "I'm not going out." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, I can't go anywhere." I said, "The tires are flat, and I can't walk worth a crap." I said, "Good luck." He's like, "Oh no." And he was just as depressed as I was. So basically, all I did was just went back in, had a cup of coffee, and started packing up and getting ready to go. But the one piece of gear that I will always bring with is that green tire slime.
Yep.
And that's something I'm going to have. And then also on top of that, I haven't bought it yet, but I am going to. And this is probably a good idea for everyone. Those little battery powered jumper cables that also act
Mm-hmm.
as a
Charger.
air compressor, an air
Yep.
compressor as well. So that's something that I will have in my arsenal moving forward here for this year. So that's my tip on, on some of the things you might want to bring with, especially if you're riding an e-bike. But also, these things will fill up car tires. You know, your tire starts going flat or whatever. So yeah, there you go. There's mine. So what do you guys have?
Josh.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I think one of the things that I've started using the last couple of years more and more, and I know it's been talked about on other podcasts, but are those like Titan straps. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those. Um, they're like heavy duty rubber straps that are super simple, but I'll use it to tie my sticks to my stand, or if there's anything heavy that I might want to use, or to tie down, or like I'll use them to tie down like a thicker branch that like a rope can't do. You can really cinch hard on them because they can hold quite a bit of weight. And so I'll use those for carrying my stands and sticks because I mean, a lot of the newer stuff is a lot better for being quiet and interlocking together. Um, but I still find that I can use those Titan straps to really position my stands and sticks together when I'm doing hanging hunts. Um, and so where they're just so tight that they can't make any noise and rattle around. And so I think that's like a really good small piece of gear. And there you can get like a 3-pack for whatever, $22.99 on Amazon. And there's, obviously the off-brand ones you can buy that are some name I can't pronounce, but um, I think it's a super useful small piece of gear that's really, really useful in a lot of different situations.
Nice. What are you, Brandon?
Well, I've been kind of out of this game. I mean, like, well, I've been on the ground last year. You know, I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the stand, and then I didn't go out west last year either because our daughter being born. So I didn't do any out of state hunting. So I've been kind of out of the game, I guess, as far as like, oh, this is something new that's an essential for me. I mean, I've always liked a nice sharp knife for doing anything with I mean, you can do anything with a knife, but for as far as taking care of your game and your extra and and extra blades for it, because I've had an issue where that broke off and it was the last one I had in my pack too. So that was and it was slightly frozen at the time as well.
I
But
got one for you, Brandon. I know it's not for out west, but something I know your dad is really partial to that you guys always have when you're gutting deer.
oh, the butt out.
The butt out.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I do like that. I have never brought that out west because with quartering them up typically and carrying them out, but yeah, I like that one for at home actually. Got one at a garage sale for free actually, so replace the old one.
Was it used?
No.
Was that at Sugar Daddy's? Is that where you got that one?
Yeah, I think it was over that direction.
Pure pleasure. Isn't that where you can buy a lot
Yeah,
of stuff?
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
No, that's those are great tips. And Josh, what did you say the name of those straps were again?
Titan straps.
Tight straps. And Brandon,
Titan, like Titan, like a
okay.
Titan.
Hmm.
The knife was the one thing I was going to bring up, and we kind of know a guy that might make knives and stuff, but
Yeah.
we'll get to that in another podcast one of these days. And I actually talked to him this last week, and he mentioned that he'd be able to help me out eventually here, but he's kind of backed up right now because he just finished a large batch for a guy named Josh. So I don't know
Ah,
what's going on there and who gets priorities around here, but
right.
obviously it's not me. So we'll see what happens as time goes on here.
Brother-in-laws get priority over cousin-in-laws.
Ooh,
Right. Oh, shoot.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
we're gonna kind of wrap things up. Before we do though, I don't know, maybe just anything you want to share for people. You know, the hunting season's right around the corner here. Just some things to kind of keep in mind before we shut her down here, Josh.
Yeah, I'd say I think one thing, like you kind of touched on earlier, is a lot of people, you see their nice bucks all summer, and then now that the fall shift and the food sources are changing, people are like, "Oh, where's my deer? I got no deer on camera." Like people are starting to get anxious about it. Like I always got to remind people, I'm like, got to relax. Like if you historically have decent bucks around, unless you clear cut your whole property and it's a big barren field, you're probably still going to have nice deer this year. So just, be patient with the timing of the season, and things normally shake out, relatively similarly as in terms of like a historical fashion, right? So I guess that's a long way for me to say, if you're not having bucks on camera right now and you feel like they disappeared or you don't have any yet this year, like you're not out of the game yet. There's no reason to get all anxious about the season this early in the game, because I think me and Brandon talk about every year. We typically always have a couple nice bucks around throughout the summer and the early fall, but a lot of when we get majority of our pictures is probably October 15th through November 15th. So it's just kind of, you just got to bide your time for that fall shift. And when bucks start to get that spike in testosterone and kind of hone in on their doe groups, I don't think there's a reason for anybody to get too alarmed this early in the season.
So let me ask you this, Josh. So let's say you're someone who doesn't have anything on camera yet. I mean, but historically, deer show up late October. What are you doing during that early season to scratch the itch?
I mean,
are you still going out on that property? Are you still, say you got a 20-acre property or a 40-acre property. Are you still going out in those spots hunting, or what's your thoughts on that, or your philosophy?
Yeah, thankfully I hunt quite a bit of other species and go out of state a lot, so I get to scratch the itch, whether it's goose and duck hunting or dove hunting or going to a different state to deer hunt early season. But I would say what I've done in the past, which is kind of the inverse of this, is normally, we'll start to lose bucks end of November, and if I didn't tag out then, and there doesn't seem like nothing's cooking at home or none of the bucks are mature enough for me to want to shoot, like what I'll do is I'll just go, hunt public or try to get new permission somewhere else. Like, that's, I would say, if somebody's just looking to go scratch the itch, just go try a new piece of public or go out of state or do something different to do it. And it doesn't even have to be deer hunting. I would say go buy a duck license or a dove license, or do whatever you can to get outside and do something you enjoy. And if you're a golfer, go golfing. You can golf into the early part of October in most of the state. Now it stays warm enough, it seems like. So
or if you have a newborn at home or young
take
kids
care of
at
the
home,
newborn.
You kind of build up those brownie points a little bit till the time is right.
That is a really good point. Really good point. Yeah. Bide your time, build up your brownie points. That way you can say you've been a kick-ass dad and deserve to take 3 weeks off at the end of October and in November. That's probably a better idea, I would say.
How about you, Brandon?
Shoot a doe. There's plenty of
go.
them, that's what I mean. If you're not getting those bucks on camera, and if you want meat, that sort of thing, it's like shoot a doe during that time. There's always that thing on podcasts that come up of, well, what if that buck is standing right behind him 10 yards into the woods, and I shoot this doe and we make all this ruckus, that kind of thing, well, how often is that really happening at that point of that early season? It might help someone get the jitters off, or if you miss or have a bad shot, that sort of thing, to readdress that stuff. But that's
good practice too.
Yeah, exactly. Good practice. It's gonna be different every time, but
I think he's talking to me actually, Joe. Not everybody. He's just
I was
telling
gonna
me
lay that out there
does.
before. It was like
taking shots.
I got out this big tag holder over here. You're not gonna, won't be targeting one of those this year. But,
Oh, you never know. You never know.
but again, there's plenty of them around, and we do a lot for meat with the family and stuff with it. So, that's definitely will be one of my things if I'm not on a buck like I was last year or whatever, and try to get on a doe right away. So, we'll get one in the freezer.
I think that's a great
that's
point.
a good tip in general. Just because I've been fortunate to shoot a fair amount of deer now, so I don't have those anxious jitters as much as I used to. But for so many guys, it's like they jumped out of the gate now, where they only want to kill big deer, but they haven't killed a lot of deer. Shoot some does, get a little bit of that out of your system, so you're used to that in the moment scenario. Because I think my grandpa always talks about it. He's like, it's always easy to kill a doe when you're not trying to kill one. But as soon as you go try to kill one, it takes
Exactly.
over a little bit, right? So even a simple mature doe, and it's good for the herd. It's good for you as a hunter and a shooter, you know. So yeah, I can't agree more with Brandon, and I know I need to do more of it myself just for the sake of our deer herd in our area. But
No, Brandon, that's a very good point. I was actually thinking about that today, that I wanted to make a point of harvesting does because, you know, our whole podcast, we didn't speak about a doe the entire time until you just mentioned it. And then that's the way most podcasts are. And we need to remember that, if you do want bigger bucks, you got to take out some of those does so that whether it's the browse pressure or just the stress or the number of deer, whatever in that area, bedding, all that stuff plays a factor in antler development. It does. It plays a huge factor. And what's, I don't know, to me, like for myself this year, last year I didn't shoot anything. It's been a while. The year before I shot a doe, but to get back in that groove again too. You know what I mean? The last time I let an arrow fly was when my bow was off and I shot underneath that buck at 40 yards. So the last thought I have in my head right now is I missed that damn buck, to get that confidence back up again. Like, yeah, I can still do this. I mean, it's game on. Let's go. But just like you said too, Brent, there's plenty of does around here. Now you go to northern Minnesota, it's a different ball game. You know what I mean? Where you might want to
yeah,
be a little more selective on what you're taking. But like I said, I got a 2 acre bean field here, and it is boom, it's mowed down. Um, so yes, I need to take some does out here. The other thing too, to kind of go along with that, to scratch the itch, if you have a youngster or whatever, take them out on a doe hunt. Bring them out. I know the way it's shaping up here, I mean, if I continue to see the amount of does around here, and after the season, the rifle season's winding down, what I've done before was I told one of my coworkers, said, "Hey, your daughter never shot a deer this year. Bring her out on my property. She can shoot a doe." And because I had too many does around, she came out with her dad, and I went there in the stand with them, and they were able to shoot a doe, and she was happier than heck. But that's something early season too. If you got a youngster or, somebody that maybe is new to hunting, maybe go with them and help them, guide them like what you did with Ashley, Josh out west. Guide them out there, and that'll scratch that itch for you, no doubt. So
Mhm.
there's plenty of opportunities to get out there and do different things to enjoy the outdoors because, when it's fall and you get 50-degree days, 60-degree days. I mean, you don't want to be sitting inside. You want to be outside doing something. But I
oh,
think one thing
100%.
I might do to kind of scratch the itch a little bit is I'm in the mornings I might head out to the lake and do some fishing, you know, in those mornings, and then evenings go out and hunt and whatnot. But that's the other thing too. Like come fall, I'm like, "Oh, I just want to be on the stand in the morning, but I'm like, I'm not going out there. But I want to do something outdoors, so I might be firing up the old Johnson and heading out to the lake. But
We're gonna have to take you duck hunting
Yeah,
there you go. That would be fun. That would be fun.
or dove hunting.
right.
We go down
Yeah.
to Alabama and do some dove hunting down there.
Texas, that's where you want to go.
Yeah, right. All
Hey,
right,
before we
guys.
hang up, I got one thing. I
Yeah.
did shoot a doe last year that I totally forgot about. So
Oh, did you?
Brandon, I with the muzzleloader, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you
Do you
Forgot
do
did.
about
you,
the muzzleloader.
You did
do you
fill tag. See?
you remember
I
Josh
did
when
film
you
one.
you went out with me and I shot that doe with the muzzleloader and you
I
filmed it?
remember how I remember how freaking cold it was.
Dude, that was so fun. I mean, that was so exciting.
Oh, it's awesome.
And soon as I shot, like it was one of those where people say, "Oh, you can hear the bullet hit." I heard the bullet hit, and I'm like, "I got her. I smoked her." That was awesome. But yeah, that was sweet. And that's what helps kick off deer camp too in my mind. Like especially for us, when somebody harvests a doe, everybody still gets together. You see the deer. You sit around, have a few beverages, and like. And all of a sudden, it's usually in the evening, so it's dark out, and you start to feel that crisp frost starting to come down. It's like, It's here, boys. It's game on. So
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to it. I'm getting fired up. I think we're going to shut her down here, guys. Thanks for coming on the podcast, joining me, and we'll have to do this again sometime because I enjoy having you guys on here.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thanks for listening this week, you guys. What's kind of funny is after the podcast was over, Brandon, Josh, and I kind of sat around and kind of BS'd afterwards, and one topic we started talking about was wolves. And once you know it, it was about a week ago, one of my buddies sent me 2 trail camera photos of a couple big timber wolves that he had on camera, and then today, which is the following day after we're done recording the podcast here, I'm kind of wrapping things up, but my trail camera photos just come through, and once you know it, I have a timber wolf on my trail camera too. So, last couple years, they really haven't been as thick as they have been in the past, but things are looking like the population is kind of coming back around here in central Minnesota, which is always kind of demoralizing to a certain degree for us as hunters, because we know that they can wipe out a deer herd in a hurry, and it takes a while for it to recover again. So hopefully it's just a roamer, but odds are more than likely it's not, because from around here, my experience, when you see one, there's a lot more. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'll kind of keep you guys in the loop on that. But just wanted to thank you guys for listening. Thanking Josh and Brandon for coming on the show with me. We're going to have some other good ones coming up. We got a couple guests that are going to be joining me that have some really good topics and some good hunting content to bring you guys. And, with your guys' support, I'm able to bring you guys all of these podcasts and all the content that we put out there. So we appreciate the support. Continue to show your support by liking, subscribing to all of our social media pages. We really appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating on our podcast here. And then also, the big thing is just sharing kind of with other people who we are in our podcast, so other people have an opportunity to enjoy the content we're putting out there. And like I said, if it weren't for you guys out there, we wouldn't be doing this. And then also, along with our partners and our sponsors, Arctic Shield, Domain Outdoor, J&R Outdoors, Skullcraft, The Fish Guide, Tacticam, and also Fourth Arrow Camera Arms. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Good luck to you guys, because I know there's a lot of people heading out west in the upcoming weeks here, if not when you're listening to this podcast right now as well. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day.